Senator Gillibrand. Senator Lincoln.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for holding the hearing today. Welcome, Chairman Gensler. We're glad you're back.
Good to see you again.
I'd like to associate my comments with the Senator from Pennsylvania, Senator Casey, in terms of the challenges that we face, but the opportunities that we can find there. And I think there are great opportunities here. I also want to associate my comments with him in terms of making sure that as we do move forward, that we don't do so putting a disproportionate burden on our hardworking farm families and our agricultural communities across this country. They do a tremendous job providing food and fiber for the world. And I hope that as we look at what we're trying to do, that we will keep that in mind always. While it isn't necessarily my preference to move on cap-and-trade legislation in the Senate this year, if the Senate is going to move on climate change legislation in the future, certainly the regulation of carbon markets is something we have to get right. And we're certainly going to need you all at CFTC to help us do that, Mr. Chairman. Under the cap-and-trade legislation, we're venturing to create kind of a whole new commodities market, which presents, I think, a number of these challenges that we talk about and issues for Congress. And we thank you for your hard work in this area and the research you've already done and working to try and come up with those solutions. Just a couple of questions for the Chairman. Obviously, CFTC could play such a large role, as you've mentioned, and has the capability to do that in regulating carbon markets under a cap-and-trade system. What would you say is probably the most important thing that you have learned, or that we all in America should have learned or could have learned from the EU experience in regulating the carbon market?
I think that what we've learned from the European experience is these markets are going to be likely sizable, that we have to bring transparency to these markets, that they need to be regulated. They do not yet regulate the over-the-counter derivatives marketplace, and I can't point to a problem there, but I think enough problems have been in our markets that we should include the carbon markets in what Congress is moving forward in over-the-counter derivatives for sure. But I think transparency and to make sure that we bring it under market regulation, any centralized cash market, any centralized futures market, and also this over-the-counter market.
Well, you continue to, I think, certainly re-emphasize the fact that what we have done in the past here in similar situations have been on a much, much smaller scale. When we talk about, you've mentioned the SO2 and the SOx and the NOx and what we've dealt with there. Do you think what we're dealing with here is too large to deal with this type of an approach?
No, I don't. I think it's just it's larger scale. It
to deal with this type of an approach?
No, I don't. I think it's just it's larger scale. The size of it makes it even more incumbent upon us that we have an oversight function, that the price discovery function is free of manipulation, and that it's transparent, that a national registry, even if it's kept by EPA, is updated on a very regular, real-time basis, not at the end of the month, not at the end of the quarter, but it's really updated on a very regular basis and so forth.
Well, I have some real concerns about the volatility of the possible volatility in these new markets, carbon markets. And I guess the two questions I would have to you on that would be if you believe that the Waxman-Markey approach is the correct approach to helping prevent carbon markets from wildly fluctuating, and what do we see in the possibility of the ramifications of that volatility, that possible volatility, particularly to consumers? I know Senator Johans brings up his turkey farmers. I've got a lot of poultry farmers and catfish farmers and others that exactly what happens, cattlemen as well. When the price of that feed goes up, they're out of business. And when they do, then the price of those products, those foods in the grocery stores go up. There's concern all around. I mean, what about that volatility? Do you think the Waxman-Markey approach has enough in it to deal with that volatility, and how do you think that volatility could affect our consumers?
I think that as Congress tries to address itself to how to lower the emission of greenhouse gases, the trading piece of this, it's most important to make sure there's transparency. Like other markets, there will be some volatility. But the way one addresses that volatility is to make sure that people can hedge their risk for long periods of time, that they're not subject to the whims of a current weather pattern or some weekly pattern, and they can hedge it. They can see that national pricing. They're not subject just to some a dark market, and that you have a strong regulator who's going to enforce manipulation standards and aggregate position limits as we seek to do in other markets. But you're right, and both senators are right. I mean, there will be some volatility in this marketplace, but I think transparency, anti-manipulation, a national market rather than smaller regional markets, and aggregate position limits are part of the puzzle here.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Lincoln. Again, Chairman Gensler, thank you very much for your testimony and for your leadership at the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. I listened intently as I could to a lot of the